Hey, it's that time again. I'm telling you what, people are struggling. People, what's going on? I mean, people, something is going on every day. I mean, we all got something. You don't have to be paralyzed like me. You don't have to be, suffering so bad that the world you think's come to an end. But even though we're in that sometimes where we think there's nothing going right, we can't do anything to get better, and this is it. Well, I'm here to tell you this podcast is for you, the Professor of Perseverance podcast. I'm Dr. James Purdue, the Professor of Perseverance himself, here to tell you life is worth living. I don't care how much of a struggle you're in. Find someone that's been through what you're going through and let them be an example to you and a mentor for you. Today, we have a guest today. I'm telling you what, I'm blown away with this guest, and we're going to go from there. I'm telling you what, just make it easier. Let's just go ahead and get started here. Let's get her, Erika Bogan. Thank you for coming in. Now, let me read on. Thank you for taking your time to be here. Now, Erika, I'm going to read some of your accomplishments. At the age of 21, she suffered an unexpected injury. She says in a split second time to change her life. She, since then, instead of doing the old pitiful, poor pitiful me, I've lost everything. Oh, I didn't. Oh, I'll never. Will y'all give me some bonbons and change the channel? No, she didn't do that. All right. She says Erika captures her audience. She's a motivational speaker, athlete. She's a Miss Wheelchair of North Carolina and end up with being crowned Miss Wheelchair America. But she goes on to say that she shares how she decided to turn her tragedy into triumph through forgiveness. Boy, that is huge for forgiveness, personal growth, and giving back to the world around her. So, Erika, former Miss Wheelchair America of North Carolina. She is an athlete, and actually she was on a show with Mike Rowe. We're going to see a snippet of that here in a minute. But Erika, come on, you know that none of this really happened. You're dreaming, your injury happened, and you're laying in bed and you're going, boy, this would be nice if I was Miss Wheelchair or I was a beauty queen. This would be you. Come on, Erika. People, they tell us when I got hurt, I was told everything I couldn't do. Not one person told me what I could do something. And so they would just do the best you can in life and go from there. So, Erika, welcome again to the show. Appreciate you taking your time out and being here. Go ahead. Enlighten us with, you're amazing for what I've reading over here. I want to grow up and be just like you.
Thank you so much. Early on, my experience after getting paralyzed was very similar to what you described and being told everything that I can't do. And so early on, I'm very, very stubborn. And I'm one of those people that you tell me I can't do something, and I'm going to try to find every way possible to prove you wrong. And I think that stubbornness is what kind of pushed me and catapulted me into where I am now. And I think is what opened a lot of the doors to all of the amazing opportunities and experiences that I've been blessed with over the last 18, almost 19 years. I can honestly say that, when people ask me all the time, I'm sure you might get this too, especially with technology and new medical advances in science, especially when dealing with spinal cord injuries. People ask me, would you want to walk again? If there was ever a chance of them being able to do stem cells with you and you would be able to walk, would you want to? And I'm like, not really my focus anymore. I've been able to really embrace this life and embrace my wheels. And, I just really, truly believe that without this experience happening, I wouldn't be able to live my purpose. And I feel like I'm absolutely living my purpose because of this. So why would I want to give that up? I think I'm one of the weird paraplegics that doesn't really have the desire to walk again because I see how much this life has enriched my life, if that makes sense.
I would say you're weird paraplegic because I've heard other paraplegics that have said the same thing. I don't know if many quads have come out and said this, but I've heard other paraplegics that they said if I was to get up and try to learn to walk again, I would be unstable, walking slow. Said this way in the wheelchair, I'm a push and a scat away from doing whatever I want to. And
Absolutely.
we're learning to walk again, I'd be so much slower retrieving. If you're not at 100%, I
Yeah.
would rather be sitting to be able to get around much quicker and faster and easier.
Yeah, my wheelchair has become my wings. And, a lot of times I think there's a stigma attached to a wheelchair that it's something negative. And so people's first reactions are, oh, I'm so sorry. Is this permanent? And I'm like, yeah, why? Yes, it is permanent. And there's no need to be sorry. These wheels are what take me all over and help me accomplish my goals and my dreams and live my purpose of empowering other people no matter what it is that they're facing.
Again, when I first got hurt, I was told everything I wouldn't be able to do.
Yep.
And then experimenting on my own to be able to find out what could. And I'm like you, I'm thankful that I was hard headed, because when I first got hurt, I was told I'd never walk again, maybe not move from my neck down. So here, at least I can move my
Yes.
hands. They're not the best hands, but I can move them to help push my wheelchair. And of course, they definitely use them to eat with. But
That's an important part.
there you go. And
You're
so, but
exactly
again, I was told everything I couldn't do. And so then I have, according to them, have surpassed way more in my lifetime than I thought I would have. I've been over in Africa, Germany. I've been in
right.
Paris. I've been over in the Comoro Islands, and there I was an ambassador for people with disabilities. We were able to get 12 wheelchairs to take over there to help get other people out of their houses.
I
And
love
so,
that.
so I've done more. I've coached. I have done the athletic part as much as I used to. Well, I used to be an athlete before getting hurt, but I tried one Paralympic thing, and after that, it just wasn't my forte.
Yeah.
And may have been just I didn't give it a chance because I did just the one thing, two different events, and just wasn't my thing. But
Right.
That doesn't mean there's other things I could have tried or should have tried and whatnot. But yeah, I'm just so thankful. Again, I've done far more than what they expected.
Yes. I think we all have. I talk to people with spinal cord injuries all the time and sometimes on a daily basis, and especially in mentoring and helping other people kind of find their new normal after injury. And, down the line, they always end up saying to me, like, I'm just so thankful that what they told me initially isn't what my life became. And being able to kind of reflect and see their ability rather than their disability. I think is key to keeping people motivated and going out and chasing whatever it is that they desire to do.
Now let's take a minute here. Let's go back to the Mike Rowe
Yeah.
series that you was on, the episode you were on, and
Yeah.
we'll show a little snippet. So explain to us what we'll be watching a little bit of. It's how they help other people with disabilities go through this. I've heard it called mudding. I don't know what else it's called. I
It's
just heard.
Yeah, so I am an athlete. I'm a CrossFit athlete that I compete in CrossFit, as well as that's how I train for my other sport, which is OCR. It's obstacle course racing, and you're absolutely right. There's a lot of mud involved. So specifically, I do Spartan races. And Spartan races are hosted all across the world. They are typically mimicked after like Marine boot camp. They're very, very brutal. But they're so much fun. And yeah, there's a lot of mud involved. And I actually have a whole team of people who volunteer that are a part of our organization called More Heart Than Scars, that helps other people not allow their abilities, whether it's or even their scars, whether they're physical or they're invisible scars, hold them back from anything. And so my team is also a nonprofit organization, again, that just helps people heal and find their purpose, find their passion. And they do that by taking adaptive athletes out onto these crazy race courses. And so we were actually chosen and featured on Returning the Favor with Mike Rowe. Our organization got chosen, and None of us knew going into filming what we were filming for until Mike Rowe showed up at our headquarters.
I love Mike Rowe.
Oh, he's amazing.
So let's watch a minute or so of this and go from there. Let me see. Let me get these buttons pushed right. Let's see here. We want to show this. All right. I think we're set up. So let's go here.
And Zach is one example of that. Zach Pave started an organization called More Heart Than Scars. Any scar, whether it's visible or invisible, you're welcome.
The mission of More Heart Than Scars ultimately is to encourage others to live boldly.
I get
More Heart Than Scars started with an obstacle race. The big marquee ones where you're climbing through mud and you're jumping over stuff. And they get paraplegics, amputees, anyone who has a different ability.
There's somebody.
Races. They maybe finish last, but they still finish.
Any idea of a diagnosis, whether that's an interior scar or an exterior scar, they're not your identity. More heart! More heart! Someone yells out more heart, and the people yell back then scars. We're saying, we acknowledge you've been through this, but you are so much more than this. And that echoing battle cry says, you are not alone in this.
They now have a big team that travels to these races. So that's sort of where this was born. We saw in me adaptive athletes that maybe thought they would never be able to complete something like that.
There's somebody.
They need legs and arms.
That's me
He has
too.
those things, and his volunteers has those things. What he needed was heart at that time in his life. So that's where More Heart Than Scars came from. He's actually an amputee himself. He'll tell you the story of how that happened. And that sort of launched this organization.
We are disabling the word disability. We are achieving.
All right. Man, this is all. It's awesome. I know that. I don't know if you met Jessie Strawham. And
Yeah, actually, I mentored her, so she's one of my mentors.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I interviewed her back in September, and we saw a little video of stuff going on. That she had a demo of this going on as well. It's amazing. More Heart Than Scars. That's a great line tag and everything like that.
Yeah, Jessie actually, she did her first couple races with our team, with More Heart Than Scars. That's how she got started. So, yeah, she's my amazing little sister from another mister.
There you go. She and I'm a firm believer. We look hard enough, we'll find more people that are good, that want to help.
Yes.
But all we hear about is the bad people.
Oh my goodness!
That's the sad thing. I hate watching the news now. I'll watch it for sports information, but this other stuff when they lead, all the negatives they lead with, when they could, and then they'll bury an inspiring story 30 seconds right at the end before they want to leave. When I think they ought to be doing more of that. I mean, I understand there's things you got to get out there to go watch, to be careful because there's an escaped convict or something, out there. Be careful in your area. That I understand, but I think ought to be. We had a great story. It's been many years ago. A boy that I coached in baseball. This before I got in the wheelchair and everything, and then he ended up. He was a black man, African American. Ended up going to. Oh shoot. What's that military school? It's a military school. I can't think of the name of it, but he ended up going there to the military school and graduating, played football over there with them. And Tim, I'm sorry, buddy, I can't remember the name of the school, but it's high prestige school. But he went to even our own local newspaper front page of someone who got hit by a car. And then he was buried 20 pages back, or 8 pages back. West Point, thank you, Jay. There's my buddy.
Westport, okay.
West Point, that's it. Thank you, Jay, for that. Yes, thank you, Jay, buddy. And so he graduated from there and everything. And his story is buried 8 pages back in the newspaper and a small thing. I'm thinking, as much struggle as the African American people getting, this ought to be the lead story of what can be done as a great example, not only for the African American community, but for all people, to show what can be done. and they buried it. And then same thing with our media. They bury all the good stuff and everything.
Well, and I don't know about you, but I also see a lot of times they use our stories as kind of like, I know I hate this word, but it is what it is. It's inspiration porn. And I'm like, why not put more of these stories in the forefront? Like, especially right now in 2020, the mental health crisis has gotten even worse. The suicide rates are up. The drug relapse rates are almost tripled. I mean, and right now, especially, is no better time than to be sharing the positive stories and the good stories about kindness and love and grace, and that they're happening all around us. I feel like if we concentrated more on that, some of those numbers might go down. As far as the mental health awareness world and suicide prevention and that kind of stuff, which is one thing that is very, very, very near and dear to me is mental health and helping people, who are struggling with that darkness.
Oh yeah, and it's not just that. Like I said, it's drug abuse is rising, domestic violence is rising. I mean, the murder rate's rising. People are just so tired of being cooped up, and they're getting out and want to go do it if they want to get back to normal. So let's have a bunch of stories of people that have succeed in tragedy times, and let them know that this shall pass. This is not as bad as we're making it out. Not to say people died, and I'm sorry for that. But again, if we all do what we're supposed to and do the best we can, avoid everything that we shouldn't be, we will get through this. We as Americans, we've been through other things, and we've triumphed through it.
Absolutely. In the grand scheme of things, this is literally just a sentence in a chapter of our whole story. This is just in the moment right now. And this too, I'm praying shall pass, but even in the midst of this, like I said, I mean, there's still so much positive going on. And we don't hear enough of it. So it was one of the things I was so super excited about you inviting me on your podcast. Is this is so positive, and this is another outlet to really be able to share our stories. And like I said, I mean, even if we only touch one person's life, that could be one life saved.
Well, you're touching mine, and you got my man Jay over here, so you got two at the moment that I know of. And I see somebody else's own, but I don't know if they can come through or not. But I see someone else. Jay, this guy here, Jay Wright, him and I went to high school together.
Jay.
So he's been a good supporter of these podcasts. Appreciate you coming on, Jay. Thank you, buddy. All right, Erika, now with all this Spartan and everything going on, were you an athlete before and you've done this purposely, and I'm not going to let it slide any longer, because I told you I was reading your bio, you get to meet Erika, and you talk about tragedy happened. You talking about changing your life in a split second. And even now, you haven't told us what your injury is, what happened.
You're right.
So I know you're doing that to get us enticed, to get involved and get interested. All right, now we're all interested.
Well, how I got paralyzed is actually what, over a very long period of time, of course, of different events that led me to my career path that I'm in now, which is helping people in the mental health world. So I am a trauma-informed certified coach, and I help people who have experienced trauma. But I got injured almost 19 years ago. In January, it'll be 19, because of domestic violence. And it was a car accident. And I know a lot of people are always like, okay, well, a car accident caused by domestic violence, like, what does that mean? I had been in a relationship that I was very immature at the time. So was my ex, and especially emotionally immature. We had a very rocky relationship. There was a lot of jealousy, a lot of control. And of course, at that point in time in my life, I was like, oh my gosh, he loves me so much. He doesn't want anybody else to have me. So it's that classic, like, textbook story. But we had gotten into a stupid argument, which was very normal and sometimes daily. And I was going to walk home because I lived about maybe 2.5, 3 blocks from where we were at his mom's house, and we were outside, and he picked me up and forced me in the car, and was driving with anger and doing a 75 and a 35, they estimated, and went to hit me and overcorrected and lost control of the vehicle. So the last thing that I remember is the arguing. and I went out the passenger side window. The car flipped about 6 times. They estimated that my body went about 75 feet and it hit a tree, which is what broke my vertebrae, my T11, T12, and L3 vertebrae, and caused me to be paraplegic. So a lot of things stemmed from that. You know, you were talking about your experience when you first got injured and, you know, being told all the things that you couldn't do. And while mine was very similar, one of the things that stands out to me looking back in hindsight was the lack of addressing or even attention to the mental health aspect of a traumatic injury. And I know back then, PTSD was still really in its early forms as far as research. And it was kind of more of a thing that people thought it was just veterans that had been in war. And so we heard a lot about combat PTSD, but not so much the form that I have now, which is complex PTSD, which started at some point in possibly my childhood. And then again in my early adult years at 21 when this incident happened. And, you know, unfortunately I stayed in this abusive relationship after the accident. I was in a coma for 2.5 months. And initially when I came out of a coma, I had no recollection of anything that had happened, even 2 weeks prior to the accident. Stuff started to come back to me. Memories started to come back to me over a period of time after injury and after getting out of the hospital and then the subsequent rehabilitation. Years down the road, realized, you know, staying in that abusive environment was not good, and it actually added to the trauma that I experienced. A lot of times why I don't just announce why I was hurt is actually out of respect for my ex and his family. Him and I do have a daughter together that was conceived after injury. So very early on after I was paralyzed and out of the hospital, I found out I was pregnant, which was very scary times, a lot of uncertainty. But there's a lot of things involved that happened throughout the last 18 years. And so that's where the forgiveness comes in, is that I know that I also unintentionally played a part in his anger. By no means does it excuse what happened. But there's been a lot of healing that has happened throughout the years. And it started with forgiveness and realizing early on that I also played a part. Again, not excusing what happened because it could have been absolutely avoided. But it happened. And afterwards, the emotional abuse and the controllingness and even physical abuse started happening after. And I can look back now and see, especially with my trainings and my knowledge on mental health and the way that things happen, that he also was living with a dark monster, and it was called guilt. And I think that a lot of his anger after the accident came from that guilt and not having the coping mechanisms in place for him to be able, and even the therapy in place to be able to deal with that. And so with that said, over time, I started to realize, and over many, many years, and repeating these same cycles in my relationships, same toxic cycles, and even the way that I was responding to what was happening in my life, made me realize how absolutely pertinent and important it should have been to the healthcare professionals who were overseeing my care when I first got injured and came out of a coma and started the rehab process and the occupational therapy process and learning how to live this new normal, find a new normal in this injury, how pertinent and important it was to be able to have outlets for mental health already readily available for me. And unfortunately at that time, 18, 19 years ago, it just wasn't there. They were more, and I understand now, but they were more focused on my abilities and teaching me to find that new normal and to do the regular activities of daily living independently so that I could get out of the hospital and start really living this new normal. But I think that a lot of my healing and a lot of the physical aspects of it probably could have been a lot easier had I had an intervention early on. Would I have taken the advice or even the tools they would have given me? I don't know, because of the trauma that I had experienced. But that is what threw me into where I'm at right now, is over the course of 18, 19 years, not just my own story that I'm sharing with you, the mental health aspect, but I have lost countless friends with spinal cord injuries to suicide. And I've lost countless friends who may not have been paralyzed, but have had experiences of major trauma in their lives, in their childhoods, even in adulthood, that eventually committed suicide because those issues were not addressed. And mental health is so taboo. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to be like, hi, I have some crazy tendencies. I have some unhealed trauma. Nobody wants to announce those things. And it is very taboo, and a lot of times very kind of brushed under the rug. And by both the individual and sometimes even the families that are around don't recognize it. The support systems don't recognize it. And a lot of times the resources are not readily available. Even years, and I'm talking like 17 years went by where nobody, even my primary care physicians, even suggested therapy for me. It wasn't until my life took a downward spiral and I had what I now call a spiritual awakening, but it really, to be totally honest and transparent with you, was a mental breakdown. And at that point, at my lowest, probably scariest point in my life after injury, realized, you know what, I have to take control over my life, and I'm the only one that can make this better. And I need to take the steps, no matter how scary it is, no matter how much courage I'm going to have to muster up to do this. Like, I already know that I have 100% survival rate on shit that life throws at us, because I have absolutely already survived 100% of what I thought was going to kill me at one point in time, or that I thought I couldn't get through alone. And so this, even if it's a baby step, reaching out and telling my doctor, I need help, I need to be able to talk to somebody professionally. Was I suicidal? There were times, absolutely. But my experience was more suicidal ideation, and I would envision it. I would almost fantasize about it, because that was the only thing that I could think of that would take the burden off of the people that loved me and saw me struggling. It was the only thing that would take the pain that I was experiencing internally away from me, was just to end it. But I didn't want to die. I love life, and I love the people in my life. I love the experiences that I've been blessed with, and I look forward to many, 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 many more years of those experiences and meeting more people that are going to enrich my life and encourage me to keep climbing. And that was when I made the decision. I need to step outside of myself. I need to be fully transparent with not only myself, but with my family and with my medical staff and my medical team. And that was also what led me to, I had already been helping people through mentoring and through being a motivator, through speaking. I was already helping people. It's really funny, James, because I think that this goes for a lot of us. We're really good at helping other people fix their problems, but we never really want to deal with our own because it's scary. And that was kind of the point I was at. I realized that I could take my story, could become somebody else's survival map. And I could start doing all of these things to better myself, for my family, my kids, my support system, for me. And I could also use the things that I was learning and the knowledge that I was learning through my own experiences to help other people on an even deeper level. And so as I started to get better and started to get better tools in my toolbox for coping with life, because life's going to happen no matter what. I can have all the therapy in the world, but I'm still going to get knocked down from time to time. Like, that's life, right? But to be able to change my perspective and shift it to these things that are happening that are knocking me down, they're not knocking me down for me to stay down and unpack my things and just stay in this dark place. They're knocking me down because there's a lesson that needs to be learned. And once I kind of grasp onto that just moved me in so many ways, moved my life in so many ways. It gave me an even bigger platform to be able, and even more knowledge, to be able to help people, like I said, in a much deeper way. I started taking courses and learning about life coaching. I knew that I wanted to help people with their futures, but I also knew, in wanting to work with people with trauma, that I needed to be able to be trauma informed and be able to offer trauma informed care to my clients and allow them at times to go through some of the events of the past in order to heal, so that we can move forward to their desired future. And so that's exactly what I did. And I actually used 2020. Here in 2020, I've actually gotten 2 of my huge certifications, my really important certifications, just this year. So I've been actually practicing for a while as a life coach, but just in 2020 has it been that I've been able to actually work with people who have experienced with trauma. So yeah, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
On top of me being an athlete, a lot of the reason that I do these crazy races that everybody just saw on that little clip from Returning the Favor with Mike Rowe, what motivates me to do that really isn't the fact that I'm in a wheelchair and that I want to encourage other wheelchair users that they can do it. That's a small part of it, but it's not the main reason. The main reason is mental health reasons. It gives me a platform to be able to talk about my mental health. And again, kind of form that story and that narrative that I know somebody else who's listening, I may never meet them. I may never, ever even know that they heard my story, but that could become their survival guide to whatever it is they're facing at that point in time. And in that, gosh, all I can say is, again, like, I'm overpaid, and I'm not even talking financially, but I'm overpaid in life. And I'm a firm believer that life is about giving and building a legacy, something that people are going to remember us by. And by no means are they ever going to remember us by the house that we lived in or the car that we drive or the clothes that we wear. They're going to remember the impact that we had on them. And I think that life has literally aligned me to be living not only my purpose, but to be living a life that's going to leave a huge, huge legacy, and hopefully impact people for generations after I'm gone.
Whew.
Whew, that's a lot.
You're amazing. That's for sure.
Thank
Hey,
you.
five items now that I got from all that. One thing would be a good story one day is telling us a lot of people don't understand the sexuality that paraplegic, quadriplegics, and the role playing, and you getting pregnant. You said post, and so that could be a topic on. That's a topic in itself, because a lot of people don't understand it. Plus, being and I hate to again use inspiration, motivation for someone newly woman to understand that's still capable to happen and still could get pregnant. So that one, and so I can remember the other 4. Oh, forgiveness is powerful. And I look at forgiveness as a two-way street. Forgiving the ex-husband with the drive-in, what happened and all that, but also forgiving yourself.
Yes. I was just going to say it, but I knew you were about to say it. Yes, absolutely.
To me, I think that's huge than forgiving someone else, because you've got to forgive yourself for allowing yourself to be in that situation. Yes. You could have got out earlier, but love is a mysterious thing, right? And so that's right. And so you've got to forgive yourself. And I think you got to forgive yourself before you can forgive other people. Absolutely. That's what I think. Because it's easy to forgive them, or at least say you forgive them. But if you keep replaying everything in your mind and don't forgive yourself,
one of the things that I now know through my own therapy, working with my own life coach, as well as the trainings that I've done to be able to do my career and work with my clients. One of the things that I learned very early on was part of the reason I kept having these toxic cycles was because I absolutely was not forgiving myself. I was searching for it outside of myself. And I was also searching for other things to fill those voids of self-love. I was reaching externally and putting things, people, relationships, experiences. I was covering it all up. And so for a very long time, and this was during the Miss Wheelchair America part of my life, I was the 2010 title holder. So my year was 2009 to 2010 was my year. And at that point in time in my life, I literally wore a mask. And when I was doing anything publicly as Miss Wheelchair America and as a disability advocate, you know, going to ability trade shows and working for Colors Wheelchair and contracting for other companies within the disability industry, I wore this mask that I had this like perfect life and I had it all figured out and life was great and grand and beautiful. But then I would come home and it was the total opposite. I was in horrible relationships with people who were using me as a doormat. I was being taken advantage of. I was allowing myself to be abused emotionally, physically, I mean, all kinds of stuff. And these were with other partners, not with the initial one that I was injured because of. But I continued those cycles over and over. And thankfully, a lot of those things, I guess it's by the grace of God. I was able to get through them and keep moving, and all the while still doing really positive things in my life. And I think I had a way of trying to heal myself throughout those things. But those are all the things that I was conscious of, but didn't yet know what I needed to do next step, if that makes sense, as far as reaching out for therapy. Because again, it was taboo. It wasn't talking about. Nobody even mentioned it to me. So I'm not going to think of it. Yeah, so a lot of lessons learned, But one of the most important, absolutely, was the forgiving myself. And not just for what happened that caused me to be paralyzed, but even the perceived mistakes that I was making along the way after that. Because they absolutely directly affected not just me, my children, my family, anybody that loved and cared about me that was around me. And so learning that I had to forgive myself first was a total game changer. It was a lot of weight lifted off. I know you mentioned too about talking a little bit about being sexuality and being able to conceive and have a child after being paralyzed. So one of the things early on that I was told I wouldn't be able to do anymore or ever again, it was a huge possibility I would never be able to conceive a child of my own, which was how I got my second daughter. I already had a daughter prior to being paralyzed, but that's how I got my now 17-year-old, was we didn't have any birth control because, well, actually, you know what? I take that back. I was on birth control, but I had been put on an antibiotic and was never told that the antibiotic would cancel out the birth control, which is how I got Kalia, my now 17-year-old. But yeah, so for me, and I think it might be a little bit different from a female who's paralyzed. You know, for me, sexuality was a huge thing. For all the wrong reasons, because I wasn't emotionally healthy at the time. But that was the one thing that made me feel as if I still had something that I could give to my partner. Because let's be honest, for a female, there wasn't a lot physically that I necessarily had to do. I think one of the biggest and the hardest things was for people to understand that no, we may not be able to, and this is going pretty deep into sexuality, but no, we may not be able to have an orgasm in the same way that we did before injury, but it absolutely is possible to do. But for a very long time, that was not why I was sexually active. It was the complete opposite. It made me feel as if I had some self-worth. Mm-hmm. And I think that is very common, especially with females with spinal cord injuries. I've seen it over and over again in some of the women that I have mentored. And, you know, where their sexual needs are not necessarily being met, but they're doing it because it makes them feel like that's what's going to keep their partner with them. It
goes to low self-esteem.
Yeah.
And they're looking for love. And they want it, yes. And so they offer it. Now, the other three things that, see if I can remember now, really big, the mental issue, like you said. I remember going to occupational therapy, physical therapy, twice a day on each one of them, 5 days a week, and then once a week for 30 minutes, they let me talk to a psychologist. And I didn't want to talk to him. Again,
Right.
the stigma of that, seeing a psychologist or psychiatrist, people thought you're nutty. That's why you went. And I've come to learn that seeing a psychiatrist or psychologist is no different than going to a gym and exercising. This way you're exercising your mind and getting it uncluttered, getting its strength stronger, getting the stuff in is no different than exercise. It's healthy, but the stigma at that time when I was told to go, I'd go, I don't want to go there,
But you didn't want anybody knowing that you were going there.
Yeah. And you'd only go, but they only again offered 30 minutes once a week where you're doing occupational twice a day for an hour at a time, physical therapy twice a day, hour at a time. But then they didn't push that either as well then.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, one reason that I'm doing this podcast, and it goes back 12 years ago, I guess it may be 12 years ago, maybe longer than that. But I had attempted suicide 3 times in 3 days. That's how bad I wanted out. And someone actually found me sucking carbon monoxide in my van, in my garage, and it wasn't breathing. And they got help and got me to the hospital. I was in the hospital 7 weeks. And then once you live through a suicide attempt, they make you see a psychiatrist now. So I'm seeing this one guy once a week for an hour for a year. And he's one that said, James, you got a story. You need to get out and tell it. You can help other people. And so that's how now this come about, because I've got out speaking, wrote a couple of books and things. There you go. So that got into this. And the third one here, number 5 point that you mentioned, everything about forgiving, looking at our past, whatnot. I'm working on a course. I'm going to promote it now and working on a course, and it's called Your Past Does Not Have a Future, But You Do. Create Your Future Today.
I love that.
So I'm working on a course and book for that to be coming out. We'll see how soon, but I'm working on it.
Awesome. So, I've always got like 50 different balls rolling in different places. So I actually have also over the last year been working on writing my book, which shares a lot of the pillars that I now have in place, but it also is kind of a memoir. So it's kind of a self-help memoir.
That was my first book.
Hand in hand. Yeah,
that was my first book, a memoir, basically, of where I was, the injury, and where I've been. Basically, it was what it was. But the amazing thing to me was this happened to me twice. But one day, a gentleman was hollering at me, and he's going, Mr. Purdue, I'm in the store. And I'm going, usually when I hear Mr. Purdue, I used to be a teacher and a coach. And so I thought maybe it's one of my former students. And so I turned around, noticed some guy I'd never met before. And he says, I want to let you know that I read your book 4 times. And first thing in my head, I'm going, oh, yeah, right, 4 times. Yeah, right, fool. That's what I'm thinking to myself. I didn't say it to him. And then I said, well, if you don't mind, could you tell me how you come across my book? Did you, did buy it? Someone refer it? Someone give it to you? Someone said, hey, you need to check it out? Or did you find it laying in a trash can? I was just wondering. And then the next thing he told me, I started saying in my head, now I didn't say it to him, but I started thinking, he probably did read it 4 times. But after that, when I asked him, he said, I was locked up in the county jail and your book is on the library in the county jail. And after he said that, I was going, yeah, you probably did read it 4 times. Now I said it to myself, not to him.
More sense.
Yeah. And so, but he told me, he said, my book, what he read is going to help him in life to improve himself. So like you said, we never know who we're touching.
Yeah.
It's out there. And it was told to me by a president at a local college here, told me people are watching you. You don't have to know who or what and when, but people are watching so they can learn from you, get some experience, see how you handle things so they can improve. He said, you'll never know most of them, but they're watching.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm such a firm believer in that all the time. And, it's something that I'm always even, reiterating to my kids, to my teenagers, is you never know when you go and do that random act of kindness, who's watching. And it's one thing that I am so proud to have instilled in my girls, so I have 3 daughters, is the empathy and compassion and kindness that they have and that they show to other people without even thinking of it. It's actually one of the things that, so people always ask me, what are some of the gifts that being paralyzed, some of the positive things that being paralyzed has given you? And one of the gifts is, it has been because of my kids growing up with a mom who is in a wheelchair. They had to do a lot of things for me that they shouldn't have had to do very young, whether it was getting me catheters or helping me when I've been sick, helping me get dressed. I mean, there's things that they've had to help me do, go get food for me. And they've had to be totally selfless in doing these things. And I now see, now that they're older, I now see those things coming out. They have lives of service and they love to help other people. And the first person that they're going to help typically is somebody who's differently abled, doesn't necessarily have to be in a wheelchair, but they're not afraid at all to walk over and, hey, can I help you? And to me, that's a beautiful thing, because a lot of times, especially with kids, they're more skeptical when it's somebody that's different than them to walk up and say, hey, can I help you? You look like you need some help, and I would love to help, and be that genuine and that giving and that compassionate and empathetic. And so that's definitely one of the gifts that being paralyzed has given me. The other one that I tell people all the time is my ability to always think outside of the box, right? Because we live in a world that's not built for us. And, we've come a very long way in the United States with accessibility since the ADA was signed in 1990, but we still have a really long way to go. And so traveling across the country and even the world alone has taught me so many things and so many ways to constantly be thinking outside of the box. And so there's been times where I've been in an airport and the elevator was broken and I didn't have time to go to another terminal to another elevator. So I had to teach myself how to use escalators, and I can go up and down escalators. And when people see that, a lot of times they freak out, especially security. They're like, ma'am, you can't do that. And I'm like, oh, I just did. I'm sorry. I'm in a hurry, But having to be my own advocate and having to find ways that are absolutely crazy looking to get around and to be able to move with the barriers that are all over is definitely something I'm so absolutely grateful for. Had this life never happened to me, I wouldn't think outside of the box. And I literally think outside of the box more than just accessibility. I can look at something and be like, how am I going to get through this? Or how am I going to work on it? Even mental health stuff. And I don't think that I would have that intuition if this wouldn't have happened to me, because I know I definitely didn't have it before. I was literally just living for the moment, every moment, and never really thought much about anybody or anything else, or definitely didn't think about any of my surroundings or how am I going to be able to get into a bathroom that's not big enough for me. And so I think that has enriched my life, even though it was, I guess, could be perceived as obstacles. It's making me better.
Thinking outside the box, it goes back to what we talked about earlier. The first guy that looked at that cat that crapped out that coffee bean says, I bet that shit's going to taste pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
So getting that coffee bean out of there. So absolutely. I tell you what, you're amazing and everything. Tell us how, in case someone wants to get hold of you about speaking or just want to watch support you with your games and everything, and where are you going to be in 2021 with your Spartacus?
Spartan. So, yeah, I am so anxious. We already have a schedule of races that are are looking forward to doing, and I'm talking this way because I'm very skeptical at what 2021 is going to bring. And, Spartan actually, the venues had to ban, for lack of a better term, adaptive athletes this year. And it wasn't a discrimination thing. It was actually more the states that these are held in. Spartan doesn't have the money to fight the state legislatures, basically. And with an adaptive athlete, it is very hard to social distance. And wearing a mask out on a muddy obstacle course race that you have to go underwater sometimes. I mean, it's not really conducive. It doesn't really work that way. And so although I understand why we weren't able to run in a lot of the races this year, I'm hoping that 2021 brings a better race season for us. But one thing that I have to look forward to that is still set in stone and happening as of right now, as long as nothing else changes, is I will in September 2021 be climbing Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania with my team More Heart Than Stars. So I will be the second paraplegic female in the world to ever make it to the summit of Kilimanjaro. And again, I'm not doing it because I'm in a wheelchair, because I'm an adapted athlete. I'm doing it to bring awareness to suicide prevention. When this whole idea came about, it was literally right after I lost a dear, dear friend of mine last year in 2019. Her name was Claudia, and I lost her to suicide. And when I saw Kilimanjaro, I just simply commented on a post of one of my team members had made and was like, I want to do that. And he called me and he's like, are you kidding me? Like, do you really want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro in a wheelchair? And I'm like, absolutely. Why not? And anything at that point in time that was going to bring attention to the cause that I wanted to blast out there. And so that's why we're doing Kilimanjaro. So I have that coming up. I'm also a coach, and I am able to work with people who have been through trauma. Anybody that was interested in any of these things that we've talked about, you can absolutely get in touch with me. I'm on every social media channel that there is. And everything, my handle is just my name, Erika, Erika, Bogan, Bogan. I have a professional page, so like an actual fan page on Facebook, which is where I put out a lot of my professional stuff. I also have a personal page, but I am a little bit leery at adding people to that because it's personal. So I've gotten more conscious of who I add to that, because I think it's like definitely getting closer and closer to 5,000 people. So there's already a lot of people on there, but had some crazy experiences throughout the last 18 years. But I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram. Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok are probably the three that I'm most active on. I also have a YouTube channel, and I have a website, which is my name, erikabogan.com. And you can even reach me through my website. It actually comes directly to my email if somebody fills out the form to contact me. So there are lots and lots of ways to get in touch with me. I'm kind of a little bit all over the place. And there's lots of ways to follow my journey as well.
And do the old thing. If it's overwhelming to you, do the old thing. Google Erika.
Yes, you can definitely Google my name as long as you spell it right. Most people.
We spell it Erika, and then Bogan. So Google, and then you'll find every way to get a hold of her.
Yes, absolutely. I think I've got a couple pages worth of Google stuff. So you can definitely find me that way as well.
There we go. And the old saying, the cliche, and I know it's not right, the perfect what I'm saying, but it's paraphrasing that I'm like you. I've done more than I ever thought I'd be able to do when I first got injured. And thankfully, only one thing I regret is that my family had to go through it with me, at the beginning. Now, I don't mind them going through all the good stuff with me, but to go through the beginning, the suffering, not understanding what's going on, I would regret that. But other than that, I don't regret. And the old cliche or saying goes, you can't enjoy the beauty if you don't go through the storm.
Right. That's right. Absolutely.
Erika, we're gonna shut this on down. I appreciate you coming, spending your time, your valuable time with us, and really appreciate everything. You're a go-getter. I'm sorry you went through everything that you went through, but look what it is. But it is used. It is taught you and gave you experience on where you're at today. So it helped build your character and everything for you.
Absolutely.
So, all right. So if you can just leave us with a powerful message that someone's struggling today to help them get through just today, to let them know that tomorrow is a better day. If you give us a powerful statement, we'll end it here.
Absolutely. So when life is spinning out of control and we feel like we have no control over anything that's going on in our life, the one thing to hold on to is we always have control over our response. And changing our response to what's happening in life can literally change your entire life.
Awesome. I appreciate that. And everybody else, thank you for coming in. Jay, thank you for listening today. Coming in. Anybody on the replay, be sure to share this out to someone. Again, you don't have to be in the domestic violence or paralyzed like me or paraplegic like her to be able to spread this on. Again, if someone stumbled their toe and got an ingrown toenail and they're hurting and you think this could help them, please be sure to share it, pass it on to them. A lot of good, valuable information is here being provided today. Thank you, everyone. Hey, if I can help, go to my website, professorofperseverance.com, and you can search Google mine at Professor of Perseverance, and it'll come up as well. So thank you, everybody. Do something today, tomorrow, something next week that's going to help you persevere past your paralysis.